Hi everyone, my name is David Jevney, doing this discussion assignment for our microeconomics class. And so I'm going to start with explaining the concept of negative externality, which is, it's basically like when somebody else has a negative consequence, like an unintended or side consequence of somebody else's like economic activity. The way that I think of it is like, well, I think the best example that I saw as I'm working through the assignments and everything is like pollution is the one that everyone kind of talks about. um, and I think that's really kind of like the prime example. You have a factory or a farm or something close to where you live, and it causes negative externality for you. And then as far as like the Pigouvian tax, the concept of that is just the idea that you would tax a producer who is creating negative externalities, because it would cause them to lower their overall production, which in turn would lower the production of those negative externalities and bring them closer to the socially desirable, or what do they call it, optimal production. And it says, how does the Pigouvian tax solve the problem of negative externality? I guess that's kind of what I was just answering, by imposing taxes or costs on those producers, which causes them to produce less of the thing that's causing negative externalities for others. What is the difficulties of imposing a Pigouvian tax to solve negative externalities? I think a lot of those difficulties simply come from conflicting interests. People who are making a lot of money in different areas are gonna pretty much fight tooth and nail to keep anybody from imposing any kind of tax or regulation that's going to cause them to lower those negative externalities, and thereby lower the amount of money that they're making. And it's not always necessarily even like big corporations or rich people. I think it's just kind of part of human nature. You always kind of fight for what's in your best interest, and a lot of times, or what you think is in your best interest, or what's really in your interest. And a lot of times people just, they get so hung up on making a dollar that they lose sight of the impacts that it has on others and stuff like that. So, and I guess a good example of this in my mind is the livestock industry. I was looking at some numbers a couple years ago, and it was like in the high 80s. I want to say something like 86% of the world's arable farmland is used for livestock production, and causes a massive portion of our global pollution and stuff like that. And if we use that same amount of farmland for like raising soybeans or other crops that would just be just as good for humans to eat, and it would make a better use of that arable land with less of the pollution and other products that come from livestock industry. I don't know, that was just the number one example that comes to my mind. Says, according to the TED Talk, what are the economic values of nature? I really like the example that they gave in there about the rainfall from the Amazon forest. And it went on to list other values, like the just the animals and the natural resources like lumber and timber. And so really, I think that's, the economic values of nature are just really any kind of usable resource that you can get from nature. And not only just the usable resources, but just kind of the implicit or natural resources that nature provides for us: the air we breathe, the water that we need to survive and to grow crops and do things like that. And that also is part of why these values are so difficult to measure and price, is because you can't. How do you put a price on the air you breathe? How do you put a price on the water that keeps us alive? It's pretty much impossible, really. The results of not recognizing these values, though, are that these resources are not preserved, or valued properly, and what you end up having is people who either squander these resources or they the people who are actually or areas that are actually producing these resources, or areas that are conserving these resources, are not getting properly compensated for it. Think of your own living environment. What would be an example of something has economic value but is not priced correctly by the market, either too high or too low or no price? My own living environment, I would say, this is going to sound probably pretty corny, but I would say just the natural beauty that we live in, being blessed, living here in the Pacific Northwest. Like, you really can't put a price on that kind of scenery and the views, the fresh air, all of the stuff that we just kind of enjoy on a day-to-day basis. And I mean, maybe you could put a price on it, but we don't. And unless you count like the cost of living, like the average rent and stuff like that, which I don't know, maybe that is kind of the result of the improper pricing of this asset, because when I think about it, a lot of areas that are really desirable to live in also seem to have correspondingly, well, I can't say correspondingly because I don't actually know the data or have the data, but it seems like they also have very high rates of like homelessness and things like that. So that, I think, is a potential result of this improper pricing of having a desirable place to live. But anyways, sorry, I was really nervous doing this, and just wanted to get it submitted so that I could get credit for this assignment and participate in the discussion posts with all of you. So I look forward to reading any replies and responding to all of your guys' posts.